Welcome to Buckets, your daily NBA betting podcast, live from the Tommy John Home Studios. When you're comfortable, you do everything better, and that includes betting, so we're already off to a rockin' start. We've got bets, we've got caps, we're in or out. I'm your host today, Brandon Kravitz, the new guy at BK Picks in the app, but with me are a couple of NBA sharps, Michael Fiddle and Albert Nguyen, AC, the analytics capper. All 30 teams in action on the Wednesday slate. Plenty to choose from. Some would argue too much to choose from. Michael, Albert, I'm going to kick it over to you guys. AC, I want to start with you. When we talk about the expansive nature of a slate like this pre-All-Star break, things can get weird with that by itself. Any advice or thoughts on how to deal with an overwhelming card like the one we have in front of us? I think all of us got a little bit stopped up right before officially making our picks, which we're about to talk about here.
Yeah, great question, Brandon. And I mean, it's a very interesting, topic of discussion. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, being 0-0 is better than 0-1. And if you can have that principle and that mindset for every single card, every single sport that you handicap, I think that's going to be beneficial for you in the long run. Sure, you can play a lot of plays and have a lot of volume and be hot 1 or 2 days, 1 or 2 months, even a couple of years, you could be hot playing volume, but it's not a long-term recipe for success. So to answer your question, tons of games, Wednesday night, it's basically the last real regular season night before the All-Star game. You just don't know how motivated these guys are. A lot of them are going to be coming off a second night of a back-to-back. A lot of them have a 1 week, vacation in Cancun or Cabo planned with their families and friends. So it's really hard. I would say be selective, still trust your research, still stick to your principles. That doesn't mean shy away from firing, but it also means like err on the side of caution when it comes down to it.
Michael, are you in general agreement with what AC says there?
I'm in general agreement with AC on a lot of things in the betting space, but when you asked us, Brandon, pre-show, like, how do we whittle down the card? How do we know where to choose from? There's 15 games going on. Literally every team there's odds for, there's props for. So how do you know which markets to attack? What do you know where's safe? Personally, I mean, this is just setting up for the best pun in the world. Fiddle doesn't whittle. I'm willing to still go anywhere on this board, but what I will do strategically is I know like 6 is the most important number in NBA basketball betting. So first thing I'm doing is I don't care that the Pacers and Wizards are the first game listed on any odd screen because it goes chronologically. I'm going right to where it's like Bucks versus Timberwolves and there's a 6 on the board there, or I'm going to Kings Pelicans where it's hovering around 4.5 or 5. Suns Rockets is 6.5. So I'm looking at all of those spots and I'm saying, okay, let me target the most valuable numbers, because if I get an early line move and I get a good number there, that's going to be the most valuable ticket that I have. So I'll kind of work backwards through what the ratio of these numbers are and don't care about when the start times are, which way it appears on the screen. So those are kind of like the best ways to do it. And then also just notice what's different. Notice what's an outlier. If you're looking at an odd screen, Action Network has one on the website. You could see where all of the odds are at every sports book. Make sure you have which one your sports books and which ones you have accounts at are available, and just see where the outliers are. And then, start invoking some research, some statistics, some opinions into those metrics, and then, pick your spots that way.
Michael Fiddle, spoken with true confidence right there. I think a lot of that probably just depends on, first of all, what type of bettor you are, and also where you are. Going back to AC, what you said about you're hot at one point, you cool off. If you're cold, entering a slate with 15 games, you probably don't want to over-attack that because you're not seeing the board clearly in that moment. So on top of just general practices of not overdoing it or whatever the case may be, also knowing where you are currently in the moment. Does that sound like something that would factor into that sort of analysis as far as where you are mentally going into a slate like this?
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, when it comes down to looking into a slate and narrowing your plays, or you guys mentioned whittling down the plays. I'm always going to be confident in my plays, whether I'm on a down streak or an up streak. Like every day is different. I mean, every morning, afternoon, night slates are different in my opinion. So like I don't even care if I'm 0-5 in my last NBA plays. I still think I'm going to hit the next 5. Maybe I have a little Jason Terry in me, right? Irrational confidence, but I mean that's how you have to look at it, because each game is mutually exclusive than the other. I know a lot of people, let's say there's 3 island games on a Thursday night. People are going to be like, if the first 2 games of the dogs cover, they're going to slam the favorite in the third game. And I just don't believe in that at all, because I think every game is so different and every game takes a personality of its own. So, yes, I mean, the way you want to manage your bankroll, if you're cold, like you definitely want to be a little more selective, but don't get, don't lose confidence. Don't lose the trust that you have in your own analysis, because if you win long term, it's going to turn, it's going to flip one way or the other. The thing where potentially lose units is not betting because you're scared, right? And you ended up not playing the games that end up winning, right? So those are some situations that you want to stay away from. I say just continue to be confident, continue to fire away. There's nothing wrong being selective, but as long as you stay within your lane. Like Fiddle, he's not going to whittle, right? He's going to continue to do what he's going to do. And I think tomorrow night, like I've been just very, very selective in the NBA as a whole this entire season. The whole, every night I may only have 1 or 2 plays max. And even though there's 15 games, Wednesday night, I'm only going to, again, only have 1 or 2 games max tomorrow night.
AC,
yeah, I think it's about following your systems. Go ahead. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I completely agree. This slate in particular, as we start to get into best bets and break down this slate, I have 0 bets as of right now for this entire slate. And I don't plan to get much action down. I was speaking generally to when you have a large card in general, I'm willing to go anywhere. I also, have an odd screen up at all times. Like I have a separate monitor that just has the screen up forever. So I will always see it, and therefore I'll have the opportunity. I'll have the hours to be able to go through every game. It doesn't take that long. So when people say they spent hours in the lab, it's just like it doesn't take that long. It takes a few seconds to come up with a play. When you know these things and when you see the good numbers, it becomes actionable very quick. And being that decisive is quite important. But on this one, this slate's disgusting. I think it's tough to bet into opening lines right now because we don't know who's got their bags packed, and I don't think that only applies to who's going to the All-Star weekend, but other people going on vacation and which teams are away and going home, or like there's so many factors going on to this. Back-to-backs for a few. There's 4 games on Thursday night, so 8 of the teams are actually going to be on a back-to-back the following, despite there being 10 games tonight. So many of these teams have these different rest spots. You're going to get so many notifications tomorrow about who's inactive and who's at shoot around, and these lines are going to bounce all over the place. So when we try and attack the card early, this becomes one of those slates. Despite good volume, it genuinely becomes hard to even sink your teeth into any spot.
Yeah, I found myself wanting to be more selective for exactly that reason, and we'll get into that right now. A reminder that everything we talk about today can be found in the award-winning Action Network app, as well as quick slips for our picks in the episode description. So we're going to go back and forth here. We'll give our picks, we'll get into it, and we'll get out of here. So let's go around the horn. AC, Brian, what are your best bets on the Wednesday slate? AC, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Clippers. They're hosting Memphis. It's -4 right now. I think they're going to run away with this game. I do have a couple other leans that we'll get to later in the show.
Michael?
I'm going to go 76ers -2.
All right, and I am going to go with the Miami Heat team total under 102.5, priced at my local book at -105. So I'll just kick us off here. Not the best matchup for an offense that appears to be stuck in the mud right now. Miami has scored in the 80s in back-to-back games now. One of those games was against the Nets, who have been playing better defense, but I also think their stats are buoyed by playing bad offenses like Miami. This is a team that's still trying to integrate Andrew Wiggins, which even at his best doesn't really raise the ceiling of your offensive success by that much. Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez are questionable for this one, and we talk about heading into the All-Star break. I think you err on the side of keeping guys like that out, so I just don't know where else they're going to get scoring from. And again, it's OKC that we're talking about here, the number one defensive rating in the NBA. OKC has held their opponents to under 102 points or less in 22 of their 43 wins this season. And Miami's offense in their current state could be the worst of all 22 that we're talking about here. So I like Miami team total under 102.5. AC, let's kick it over to you, or if you guys have any thoughts on that play by itself.
No, I like that look. I'm not going to be on it personally. I mean, you're backing, arguably the best defense in the league, best team defense and best collection of individual defenders as well with OKC. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Miami on the road as well. Like, they're not going to really be focused against a team like OKC. So not going to talk you off of it. I'm not a totals guy in general. So no play for me.
All right, well, let's talk about the Clippers -4. I was looking at this one. One thing that scared me off a little bit, and you might end up talking me into it anyway. The Clippers have beaten the Grizzlies 4 straight times. Memphis on the second leg of a back-to-back, so you would look at that and say, okay, I love that. Memphis is 7-1 with no rest this season. I can't explain it, but that's their record on the second night of back-to-backs. Why do you like the Clippers -4 in this one?
Yeah, Brandon, not only is Memphis 7-1, on a second night of a back-to-back, but the pace that they play too. They run up and down the floor and they shoot a ton of threes. They're super deep. So that's why they're, very successful on games with no rest. With that said, I think the Clippers, I don't think they have their number, right? They have won 4 straight, but the Clippers are, so Memphis is playing on a second night of back-to-back. The Clippers are playing on a first night of back-to-back. And if you were to choose 2 games that they're really, really going to go for it, is it going to be against the Memphis Grizzlies? Looking at the playoff standings, it's a very important game. Or the really, really bad Utah Jazz, where they could bring their B team and potentially still win. So I think they're going to go for it in this game. I think it means a lot more for the Clippers. And, Memphis coming off a second night of a back-to-back on the road as well. Right now, it's somewhat of a competitive game against the Suns. I think it's, within 15 points at halftime. If the Suns continue to stay competitive and make it a tough game, it's going to be a really tough, situation for Memphis. On top of that, if you're a big CLV game, this is the second night of a back-to-back and the last game for the team for basically 8 days. You potentially will have some starters sit tomorrow night, and you're going to get positive CLV for the Clippers. Without all that said, I just think the Clippers will cover all numbers. To me, this is a trifecta spot: first quarter, first half, and full game. But for the podcast, I'm just going to be on the full game Clippers.
But again, to back that up, the Clippers have owned this matchup, so I think that it might be the strongest trend that we're following here as far as those things that bake into the history of these two. Fiddle, you're going to have to explain this one to me. I can never bet the Philadelphia 76ers. This is one of those teams that I just say hands off for me. But perhaps you're looking at a Nets team that's won 2 games in a row and say there's no way that's going to keep up. Talk to me about the Sixers and the Nets.
I also just watched the 76ers game against the Raptors tonight, where they let it slip late and they kind of had multiple chances at forcing it overtime or even winning late. Joel Embiid fumbles the ball. He comes out after the game, and there's all this talk from he'll never play another back-to-back again to he's going to have off-season surgery to him saying he might play tomorrow. So we're looking at the number now, and it's completely priced as Joel Embiid is out. And I don't think they totally need Embiid. I'm starting to think Embiid is like the newest version of Ewing theory, where potentially he's a fake star, and when he's out there, it's actually a deficit to his team. And so for a lot of those reasons, I think this is a time to back the 76ers, whether or not they have Embiid or not. Like, the Nets are depleted, And then the 76ers are going to have to go into the break with a sense of urgency. They're not going to have many guys going to the All-Star weekend like they hoped they would. They're going to be, 1 or 2 games out of that 10th seed, and they're going to really need to make a push in the second half of the season. And I think it starts going into the break and then picks up right back out. I'm actually completely ready to turn the tide on the 76ers and actually look for ways to bet them moving forward. So this will be the first of that, and maybe more after the break. But 76ers -2 in Brooklyn should be one where they're desperate, and I couldn't say the same for the other side.
I don't know what Brooklyn is doing right now. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games. They've won 2 in a row. This is a team that should be bottoming out. You should be trying to get to where Charlotte is. So nobody's going to get to where Washington is, but it feels like Brooklyn is. They're almost trying too hard, which is a weird thing to say, but Jordy
very
Fernandez
well
is
coached.
They are. Jordy Fernandez.
Yeah, that's where you were going with it too. Yeah, that's what it is.
Where are you? Would you be able to stomach that one?
Well, I agree with Fiddle here. First of all, I wouldn't say Embiid is a fake star. I know he sits out a lot of games, but he is a bona fide superstar in this league. But the Ewing theory does bode correct with this team, just because I think it gives the other players more opportunities to succeed. And they're a better team, in my opinion, when they're running up and down the floor, because they really need to look at Tyrese Maxey as the centerpiece of their offense. And that's where I actually wanted to go, is potentially a lean for me. And it's not available at many books right now. But Maxey just had a terrible game today against the Raptors. 1 for 9 from the floor, 1 for 7 from 3. He only had 5 points total. I think his points prop was at like 32, 33, something like that. So it was crazy. He missed it by 28 points. I think it's a huge bounce back spot for him, because most likely Embiid's not going to be playing. A lot of shots are going to be on Maxey, and it's also his last game before who I think should have been an All-Star, because this is going to be his last kind of statement before the weekend. So I like Maxey over points.
Yeah, and it seems like when Maxey is steering that ship by himself, he is a different kind of a player. I like the lean there with him off of that bad game. There was one that I was looking at, and there's not a number out for this because we don't even know if this player is going to be active, but Dalton Knecht has been kicked back to the LA Lakers, and there's talk that they're going to activate him and actually play him tomorrow night against the Utah Jazz. His number usually sits around 9.5. I would really want to be on an under there. I just can't imagine JJ Redick goes, all right, 1 game left before the All-Star break. You might end up getting retraded back to the Charlotte Hornets. Let's give Dalton Knecht heavy minutes. So if they put out a line that's similar to what has been out in previous games, I feel like you kind of have to take an under there. Any thoughts on looking at it that way if they do end up popping an 8.5 or a 9.5 on Dalton Knecht?
That's a really sharp look, Brandon. I haven't really followed Dalton, throughout the season when it comes to his points prop, but you're right. There's no way they're going to play him. I don't think Redick is going to be able to, put him out for 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, that's pure negligence, especially if this trade is going to happen again and he gets hurt, right? That'd be the worst scenario ever. But if they do activate him, then again, I doubt books are going to put his number out there. But if he does, that's a really good look. For me, the other player lean that I'm looking into is Klay Thompson. So as you guys know, Dallas Mavericks are missing basically their entire front line and the backups, right? With their centers, and PJ Washington is out, Dwight Powell is out, in addition to Gafford and Lively. He is playing, his old team, Golden State Warriors, in Dallas. I think Dallas is going to be playing from behind for most of this game, which is going to force him to shoot a lot of threes, him and the rest of the teammates. So guys like Dinwiddie, I think Max Christie is a good look as well. But I think Klay Thompson playing against his old team, I like the over 2.5 threes. I think he's going to get about 7 or 8 attempts tomorrow night. So I like Klay Thompson to do pretty well.
For a couple of guys here that were unsure about a card, I think we've laid out a good number of picks. Fiddle, anything else on your mind before we cut everybody loose?
I also bet the Houston Rockets during this conversation. -6.
I'm seeing a 6.5 over here on my side of planet Earth.
We come full circle to knowing where the numbers are, finding that 6, seeing if it's going to be different, throwing your opinion out the door, and just taking that on a number. That's something I will blindly do.
I love that. If you want to instantly tail any of the bets that we've discussed in the episode, you can find the quick slip link in the podcast and YouTube video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet. Now, when you're truly comfortable, you do everything better, including betting a full slate of NBA action. So go get yourself some Tommy John underwear. To recap, AC is on the Clippers -4. Fiddle likes the Sixers -2 with a late add of the Houston Rockets -6. I'm on the Miami Heat team total under 102.5. And if they pop that Dalton Knecht number, I'm going to be on it. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure. That's a wrap for Wednesday's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get buckets.